Happy to be joined by South Carolina baseball head coach Paul Mainieri. Coach, we appreciate you taking the time to visit with us as you get ready to enter your second season as the head coach. You recently wrapped up fall ball. Let's start with fall ball. Like, how do you feel that it went from your point of view?
I'll tell you, Graham, I feel very encouraged about our team. I don't have any doubt that we'll be a much better team this year, simply because we brought in some really special arms. We have some pitching, I think, that's going to be able to compete at in our league, which of course is as good as there is in college baseball. And they looked really good this fall. Terry Rooney's done a really outstanding job with these guys, and they improved as the fall continued to progress. And we have some tough decisions to make, which are good decisions to make, like who's going to be in our starting rotation, because I feel like we have 5 or 6 pretty good candidates. And, whoever doesn't make the rotation is going to go into the bullpen, which will strengthen our bullpen. And so I feel very pleased with the way fall practice went, simply because I feel like our pitching staff will be much, much better.
So you mentioned all the new pitchers and just the options that you have, and it's good to have options, right? So do you kind of have an idea of what it'll look like this spring, or when everybody kind of gets back, you kind of want to go through the practice as you gear up once the season kicks off in February?
Well, as I mentioned, I feel like we have probably 6 candidates that are fighting for the 3 weekend starting spots, and maybe we'll designate one to be a midweek starter if we have enough bullpen arms to get through an SEC weekend. So I don't want to get too deep into some of the names, but I obviously the one name that'll jump out is Jake McCoy. Jake started 14 games for us last year as a sophomore. Went up to Cape Cod this past summer and pitched 3 games before he came home, and really dominated up there. He was the Cape Cod League Pitcher of the Month for the month that he was there. He had a 10 strikeout, no walk performance and a 1 4 inning outing. And even though his other 2 outings weren't quite as dominating as that first one, they were still really solid. So I feel very good about the way that Jake has improved. And now this being his junior year, I feel like he's added a changeup to his repertoire. He's always had a really good fastball and slider, but now he's got something that he can throw when he's behind in the count. And I think it's going to make him a more complete pitcher. And so it all starts with him. We also have a kid that did not pitch last year because he was hurt in his senior year in high school. He was recruited by the previous staff, but had to sit out all year last year, a young man by the name of Riley Goodman. And Riley is fully healthy now and pitched this fall. Really probably was the most dominating guy that we had during the fall. And I'm excited about him. I'm excited about some kids that we had transfer in, like Amp Phillips and Bradley Hodges, Alex Philpott was really good. I just feel like we're going to have some good options there for the weekend rotation, and we'll see how it plays out when we come back and start back up in January.
Coach, you bring in almost 20 new, transfer portal additions. Like at this point, do you kind of want to work on like the on-field part of it, the team chemistry part of it? Like what's important fall ball, and then this time period, and then once January hits?
Well, all of those transfers were not transfer portal guys. We did have 4 or 5 junior college transfers as well in those transfer players. The first year was obviously a very difficult year, Graham. I didn't think we had that bad of a ball club. I really still to this day think that we had a fairly talented team. We just did not have enough hard throwers that could get strikeouts at the end of the game in the SEC. I've been out of the game. I had been out of the game for 3 years leading into last year. And it was remarkable to me in the time that I was out, the way that the game changed, where, when I finished coaching after the 21 season, if you had a guy throwing 95, 96 miles an hour, that really stood out. And when we opened up conference play last year against Oklahoma, first pitch of the game was 98. And the next night, the first pitch of the game was 98. And I saw a handful of guys throwing 100 miles an hour over the course of the year. So it was really eye-opening to me to see just how much harder guys are throwing now. And we didn't have those caliber of arms. We had a few, but not enough to be able to win that close game at the end of the game. We had a half a dozen or more games that if we had that ability to stop the other team late in the game, that we could have won. It wouldn't have made us, a national seed or anything like that, but it would have been a much more representative season, and so that was really our focus. And we needed to go into the transfer portal to get some kids that had good arms that maybe didn't ever. But I just feel like we worked really hard and we found some good fits for us, and we're working with them. And so, number one, we just needed to upgrade talent in some areas. And I think we did that, particularly on the pitcher's mound. The second thing is we had three freshmen that we played a lot every day. KJ Scobie was our third baseman, and Bo Hollins was our first baseman. We caught Gavin Braylon quite a bit as a freshman. Well, Braylon missed the fall because he had knee surgery, but particularly Scobie and Hollins are, in my opinion, much improved players, because although we didn't have a great season last year, the one thing that we did gain out of it was those two players, along with Talmadge LaCroix, who's a fifth-year senior now, knowing that those three players have made a lot of improvement and are going to provide a lot of leadership for us this year, excites me. The rest of the position players, we did have to go out and get a lot of transfer kids in to try to have a good, solid lineup, and I think we did that. So combined with the pitching staff, it gives me a lot of hope for this year.
Coach, you mentioned just pitching and velocity and just how much that has ticked up. What would you attribute that to? Like, can you pinpoint it on anything?
Well, I think there's several reasons why. Number one, the strength training programs now have just taken become such emphasis in every program. And then there's all these other different, programs that these kids can get involved in. We have had players during the summer go down to the Cressy group in Palm Beach, or work with Driveline, or some of the other physiological people. We have a group that we work with called the Maven Lab out of Atlanta, that do a lot of analysis of their body movements. And between the different programs that are out there, the strength training, more emphasis is in nutrition, and just more emphasis in throwing the ball harder and having bigger, taller, lean, kids with better leverage and so forth. It's really just amazing. I mean, look at Major League Baseball, look at minor league baseball. I think I read an article where there were 125 minor leaguers this last year that threw 100 miles an hour or more. Obviously, watch a major league game, you don't see anybody throwing under 96, 97 miles an hour. It's just amazing to me how the game has evolved. Sometimes I wonder how anybody ever hits against these guys from 60 feet, 6 inches away. It's kind of like basketball, the hoops never change from 10 feet high, but yet look how tall the players are now in the NBA. They don't even need to jump to dunk a ball. So right. I don't know if we're going to change the rules in basketball or move the pitcher's mounds back to create more offense. We'll see.
So, other than the velocity, what stood out to you? You mentioned you were away from the game, didn't coach a team for 3 years. Now you're back into it. You just look at college athletics, how much has changed, with everything in like a 5-year window. What were your other observations your first season back?
Well, I think because of the transfer portal and the possibility of compensating players, what you see now is a lot of older position players every team that we played last year, it seemed like every player on their team was 21 years old or older. And so obviously bodies are more fully developed because they're older, they have more experience. It used to be, one team in the SEC might win the national championship because it all kind of came together for them. And then the next year, another team took their turn of having everything come together. And now it looks like teams, even the teams that have been at the top of the heap, they have almost a total roster turnover from year to year. And, primarily, mostly older players. And when I saw that from, the teams we played last year, guys that were playing for a different SEC school the year before were then playing for this new school as either a fourth-year senior, maybe even a fifth-year senior. Some guys in their draft eligible year. So the kids are bouncing from one program to the other, but what the common denominator is, it seems that all the teams in our league are so much older position player wise, which obviously means that they're stronger, more physical, and add the experience level. You just see a lot of teams that are emphasizing hitting the ball out of the ballpark. And so that was another area that we tried to address, is just getting some bigger, stronger guys to try to hit more home runs this year.
When you look at your roster, more than half of it underclassmen, like you only have 3 true freshmen. So what's it like when you have, an older group of guys, a veteran group of guys like this?
Well, this is new for me, but there's when you think about recruiting cycles, the freshman class this year, that was really the previous staff's last recruiting class, because the players now coming out of high school are committing to you as juniors. And so that would be the class that came in. And, the class, we lost some players to the pro draft. Some players, didn't make the requirements to get into school. And, before you know it, the class kind of dissolved into only having 3 players in it. So our emphasis, once our new staff came on here, was to start recruiting the 2026 high school graduates. So our first really coaching staff's tenure will be next year's freshmen, for the 27 season. So we've worked real hard on putting together a really outstanding class there. And the following year, the 27 graduates, we just signed that group in November, a couple of weeks ago, or last week, I guess it was. So really, we kind of are bridging the gap between having, the team we inherited and then being able to build from within, with freshmen and so forth. But there'll always be a place for some transfers. And, I'll tell you this, when I got out of the game after the 21 season, when I retired, what I thought was retirement from LSU, I really had some trepidation a little bit about the whole concept of transfer portal and compensation for players and so forth. It's like you have a team of free agents every year, and you think that you won't have good chemistry because of that. But what I have found actually in my short time back in the game is that most of these kids that you've invited to join your program as transfers have a very grateful attitude, and they're very excited about a new opportunity. They're grateful to have the opportunity. I have found them to be wonderful to work with. They're outstanding young men and very appreciative that they have this new opportunity to try to have a different experience in college baseball. Maybe whereas on the outside you might think, wow, everybody's selfish, everybody's bouncing from team to team. No, you can't. It's going to be hard to develop a team concept. I haven't found that to be true at all. I feel like we have a very good group of guys that coexist with each other with good chemistry on the team. And of course, to maintain that chemistry and positive feeling, you have to win the games in the spring.
Right.
And so you need to have the talent, and I believe that we have much better overall talent. We had some really good players on our team last year. Ethan Petrie was a second-round draft choice. Nathan Hall was a fifth-round draft choice. We just didn't have enough, and I feel like this team, we don't. I'm not going to say we're weakness-free, but I feel like we have some really good, solid players for just about every position, and most importantly, I think we're going to have some high-end pitching staff that's going to be better.
Well, you mentioned chemistry. Like, you've been doing this for a while. Like, what do you find is the best way to build it? Like, are you a coach? Like, do you like to assign a book? Like, do you take a trip, like a retreat? Especially with so many new additions, like, how do you find what works?
Last year at the end of the year, we took our team over to Fort Jackson here in Columbia and put them through boot camp for a day. And that was great. The kids loved it, and it really brought everybody together. And then when we went out in the springtime and lost 3 games to Clemson, and then didn't have to, struggled in the SEC, it's amazing how that chemistry that we had that one day didn't really stay together as well as we would have hoped. So, I'm not really much of a gadget guy. I'm more in how you deal with players day in and day out. I think there's that when the players can trust the coaches and the coaches can trust the players because they're very honest with each other, and the players have a love of the game, and they love to play, and they go out there and they practice with great intensity and passion, and respect is earned among the team because of the work ethic that players are putting in, or that players come through in clutch situations being very good. So throughout my career, fortunately, we've had some success. I've never really been much of a gadget guy. I've been more of a, just day in and day out. This is the way that you deal with people. This is the way you treat the players. You build their confidence. You prepare them for the pressure games by putting pressure on them in practice. And hopefully have great leadership within the team.
How did this past season compare to your first at LSU? Similar in some ways, but then, like, Coach, once you got to your second season and beyond, like, your team's kind of took off. Like, how did it compare and contrast?
Graham, very comparable. People forget, that when I took over at LSU had not made the NCAA tournament, and the program was not in great shape. I don't know how else to say it, but the first year you inherit a team, there's very little you can do to add to the team, and so you pretty much just play with the group that's there. Well, in defense of the players, it's hard, to make an adjustment to a new coach when it wasn't necessarily a decision that you as a player made to choose to go to that school to play for that new coach. And so, there's always going to be some difficulties in that transition year. I've had 5 different jobs. The only one that was pretty smooth my first year was at the United States Air Force Academy. And we just had an inordinately great group of seniors on that team that took leadership and made it more smooth. But my first year at Notre Dame wasn't easy. My first year at St. Thomas University wasn't easy. Certainly at LSU, we went 29-26 and missed the SEC tournament. So you take over a program and you try to make a difference. But the first year, a lot of times, is difficult. But what you do is you spend a lot of time recruiting new players, and you get those players to think the way that you want them to think even before they come into school, and so that nothing surprises them when they get here. They know what to expect by the way you're going to go about your business. And fortunately, when I was my second year at LSU, we didn't get off to a great start. We were 2/3 of the way through the season and still kind of stuck in the mud, so to speak. But I knew we had a good team, and we just needed to learn how to win the close games. Maybe one pitch, one play, won it bad away. And then finally we did that. I can still remember on a Tuesday night at Tulane where we won a close game late in the game, and I told the players that this is how close we were. Tonight we did it, and I believe we're going to go on a roll. And we ended up winning 23 games in a row and became a national seed, won the SEC West, won the SEC tournament, won the regional and super regional, went to Omaha, and then third year won the national championship. And I think the program has been very solid ever since then, through my 15 years there, and now Jay's taken over. Obviously, the program has been very solid. And that's kind of what the goal is here at South Carolina. This program has great history and tradition, Graham, just like LSU did. Ray Tanner won 2 consecutive national champions. But even before that, they had been to Omaha. South Carolina has had 4 runner-up finishes in the College World Series, and they won 2 national championships. So just think about it. They were 1 win away from having, if they had done that in 4 different years, they'd have national championship banners up here at South Carolina. So the history of the program is very solid, and it's my job now to try to get that restored and get us back competing, at the highest level in college baseball. And obviously things are different now with the transfer portal and player compensation and that kind of thing. And there's other changes, of course, in the game. But I have a really good coaching staff here that, just that they know how to do it. And, I don't think I was going to say, Graham, when you asked me about my first year at LSU and compared it to my first year here, is, there's advantages and disadvantages of getting old. Okay. The disadvantages are obvious. But the advantage is when you've been in it for 40 years, you've seen everything. You've been through everything.
Right.
And so you don't panic. Last year was tough. It was very difficult for everybody, including myself. But, you grit your teeth. People are going to take shots at you. They're going to criticize and so forth. Believe me, I went through that my first year at LSU. And you just grit your teeth and you just keep believing in yourself as a coach, and you believe in what we're doing and the program and the kids that you have in the program. And sooner or later, you're gonna turn the corner and forward to it. And I think this year is going to be a very important year in the development of our program.
Coach, you're a human being, right? How do you not let that affect you and impact your day to day? Because it did have to be frustrating at times. If I remember off the top of my head, didn't you guys lose a pit? Wasn't one of your pitchers jacking fly balls and gets hit in the head, and you have to he can't pitch that game, and just it was just kind of one of those types of seasons. So how do you not let it?
Well, like I said, it was a frustrating and hard year. A day in and day out it was difficult. I chose to always dwell on the positive things. And we had some wonderful young men on that team last year, and we had some bad breaks, like you mentioned. I remember when Dylan Eskew was doing some drills in the bullpen at Arkansas, and we were taking batting practice, and one of our players hit a ball out of the park in batting that weekend. So sometimes you feel a little bit snake bit. This past weekend I watched our football team, lose at Texas A&M with a 30-3 lead at halftime. It brought back some difficult memory for me because we had a game last year at Texas A&M where we lost a 10-run lead, and they hit 2 grand slams in the bottom of the 9th inning to beat us. So, on one hand, you say to yourself how frustrating and how terrible it is. On the other hand, you know that you were competitive in the game and you just didn't find a way to win the game. And, like I said, because I'm older, I like to think that I've seen just about everything you can see. And I've had years where, the breaks haven't gone our way, or we we're a little bit thin in some areas, or we just didn't get the job done when we needed to. But I also know that those tough times don't last. And, as the leader of the program, you have to show the players that not everything's going to go your way every day. But if you maintain a positive attitude and a belief in yourself, that you'll turn things around. I always believe that if you didn't have disappointments, if you didn't have adversity in your life, then you'd never really taste the great joy of success. You would have nothing to compare success to. When you have some disappointments and some adversity, and then you turn around and start having success, success means an awful lot more to you. You don't just take it for granted. And hopefully that's what's going to happen with us, with our team this year and beyond, because we're going to always try to recruit good young people that care about the right things, and we're going to work really hard with them. And then hopefully the talent will be there. I believe it will be, and that we'll make the correct decisions, and we'll inspire and motivate the players to play well, and we'll turn this thing around very quickly.
One thing I've been asking all the coaches, everybody's wired differently, right? Let's say you get home from practice after a game. Like, how do you wind down? Like, are you a reader? Like, are you a movie guy? Do you watch TV shows? Like, what's your favorite thing to dive into?
Well, I could have said for most of my life, my children. I have 4 wonderful children and a wonderful wife, and family means everything to me. But all my kids are grown now. They all have families of their own. And I'm actually over here in Colombia, but I'm not with my family. Most of the time, even my wife is back in Louisiana helping, my children with their children. And so she comes over and spends a week or so a month over here with me. And so, it's given me a lot of time to work hard at my job. Terry Rooney is our recruiting coordinator, and every night he gives me a list of phone calls to make. So I spend a lot of time making phone calls, on to recruits that we've signed or potential kids to come into the program. And it kind of has rejuvenated me. Listen, if we don't get the job done, it's not going to be because of lack of effort. We've worked really hard since we've been here, and I feel like it's going to pay off. So I don't really, other than sitting down and watching a little television and watching some other sporting events, I actually don't try to watch as many sporting events as I used to, because every time I'd watch a sporting event, I'd start to root for one team to win. And when you're playing 56 games of your own, there's only so much rooting you can do. There's only so much stress that you can have over the outcome of a game. So I like to go on the apps like Netflix and Prime Video and those type of things and watch some nice movies once in a while.
That's awesome. You've been in this conference since the late 2000s. How unique is it that you get to coach against guys that have been doing this for a while too, like Tim Corbin, Dave Van Horn, Mike Bianco? It's kind of rare that you get a large nucleus like that have been doing this for as long as you guys have. What's that been like over the years?
Well, I've always enjoyed the competition. I'm really kind of the luckiest guy in the world, Graham, in my mind. I've had opportunities to coach at wonderful institutions. Got my first start when I was 25 years old at St. Thomas University in Miami, Florida, which I had to do everything, and I learned to coach by dragging the field myself and lining the field and doing everything yourself. And that was a wonderful experience, and I'm grateful to St. Thomas to give me my first chance. And then I was hired as the first civilian baseball coach at the United States Air Force Academy, which was an amazing experience. The mission of that institution was so much greater than playing baseball, but I felt like I had an important role in their lives of teaching them how to compete, how to win. On a baseball field, you win and you lose. It's not the end of the world, but and what they were preparing themselves to do, losing was not an option, when they put themselves in harm's way. And so, you'd like to think that their experience in baseball helped prepare them to have poise and composure under pressure, and to know what it took to succeed. I'm proud that 5 of my former players became generals in the Air Force, and that was always something that I pointed to as being very proud of my time there. And then, of course, I went to University of Notre Dame, and that was awesome. I 12 years there and had so many wonderful players and people, and they're friends of mine and until the day I die. And I had opportunities to leave Notre Dame through the years, including 4 or 5 different schools in the SEC. But I just loved being at Notre Dame so much. I just really didn't consider very strongly to leave. And until Skip Bertman, who was the athletic director at the time, then he called me about coming to LSU. And I was 49 years old at the time, and I kind of just thought, if I don't do it now, I probably never will. And so I took the leap of faith and, went from a program that I felt very good about at Notre Dame, where we were, and, jumped into the frying pan of the SEC. And as you mentioned, the first year did not go well. And most of, halfway or 2/3 of the way of the second year was a struggle as well. But then we got it going, and I'm glad I had that experience at LSU, and I loved my 15 years there. And if I hadn't started not feeling well, I probably would have finished my career at LSU. But I just started not feeling well after the 21. It started probably around the summer of 2018. And then it kind of came to a head, in the 21 season. I just felt like I needed to walk away and start to feel better and start to relax a little bit and enjoy my life more than stressing out over winning baseball games. But after being out for 3 years, it just rejuvenated me. And fortunately, Ray Tanner had become the athletic director at South Carolina, and he reached out to me about coming out of retirement. And so, I'm so happy to be back in it. I don't want to say it gives my life meaning again, because I've enjoyed every aspect about my life. But you take 3 years off and you come back and you feel like you're 40 years old again. And I love coming to work every day. And, the competition in the SEC is second to none when it comes to college baseball, as you know. And as you mentioned, I've competed a lot of games against Dave Van Horn and Mike Bianco and Tim Corbin and others. And so, it's fun to be back in the saddle and back doing that. It'll be a lot more fun when we start winning more games, I'll tell you that. But I feel like that's right around the corner for us. We're going to try to sneak up on some people this year.
Well, the SEC is certainly fortunate to have you back, and appreciate you taking time to visit with us. And I mean, I can pick your brain forever. Like you've been around the game of baseball, and like you've forgotten more baseball than I'll ever know. So thanks for hopping on with us.
Thanks, Graham. It's a pleasure to be with you, and appreciate the kind words. Thank you.
That was awesome, Coach. Thanks
Okay.
for doing this. And I mean it. The SEC is lucky to have you back. So
Thank you.
thanks for all that you do, for sure.
Graham, when I'm glad you brought up the comparison of my first year at LSU and my first year here. And my second year at LSU, we were picked to finish in the preseason. We were picked to finish 5th out of 6 teams in the SEC West in my second year. So
Yeah.
I'm sure that's the way we'll probably be selected in preseason here too. But
Yeah.
that year we ended up winning the West and became a national seed and made it to Omaha. So, we have to earn the respect from people, and hopefully that's what we'll do this year.
Yeah. Well, I was just curious, I didn't know if it was similar or not similar, but like, I just remember like when Eskew got hit in the head, it's like, man, he's got to be thinking like, what else can go wrong? like,
Well, my first year at LSU, we had a better SEC record than we had here. Last year we were 22-0 against everybody not in the SEC or ACC. We beat everybody we were supposed to beat, but we just struggled against the better teams, which is, you got to beat the better teams to do your job correctly. Okay. But when I think back to my first year at LSU, honest to God, when I tell you this, coming out of that first fall practice, I thought we might go about 15-35. We were we were limited, but I had one pitcher, a kid by the name of Jared Bradford, who threw 88 to 90 miles an hour, but his fastball really sunk, and he had a nice little slider and changeup. And we ended up going 12, 17, and 1 in conference that year. And Jared Bradford won, or was the winning pitcher, or got the save in 10 of those 12 wins. So it was we very easily that first year at LSU could have won 6 games like we did at South Carolina, but we had Jared Bradford. He made the difference.
Right.
We just didn't have a Jared Bradford last year, that could
Yeah.
do. And so now hopefully the depth is going to allow us to do much better.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think we're going to surprise a lot of people this year.
Yeah. I
I'm
agree.
trying to be a little bit low key.
Yeah. Like you said, you got more options, you got more weapons pitching wise, to choose from and everything.
Yeah. Well, last year we were trying to save games with guys throwing 88 miles an hour in the 9th inning. We had Tennessee beat, and we gave up a home run in the 8th inning. We were winning by a run, gave up a 2-run homer, came back and tied the game in the bottom of the 8th, and gave up another home run in the top of the 9th.
Yeah.
Our pitchers out there throwing 88, 89 miles an hour. We go to Texas A&M, we got a 10-run lead going to the bottom of the 7th inning, and they hit 2 grand slams in the bottom of the 9th. I'm throwing a kid that had transferred here from Winthrop that had a 370 batting average against the year before at Winthrop, and he's trying to save a game for us, and he's doing the best he can. We just didn't have the arms, that.
Yeah.
I mean, all 3 losses to Clemson were games that were either tied or 1-run games in the 8th or 9th inning.
Right.
We just couldn't finish it. We had a game against North Carolina the same way, tied in the 8th inning, and we just, gave up a 6th spot in the bottom of the 8th or something, So, it was frustrating because the kids were competing hard. They were really close. We just didn't have the arms to finish it off. Hopefully this year we will.
You had moments like, you beat Ole Miss. Who was the kid had the complete game? He threw like 80 pitches or whatever.
Landon Stone. Yeah.
Yeah, like
he'll be in the bullpen for us this year.
Okay. Like that day, he was just locating everything. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like he was overpowering, but I mean, he was just I'm in control, and he was awesome that day.
Hey, Graham, the opening weekend we played Oklahoma, and we fielded a ground ball with 2 outs in the 9th inning in game 3 and throw it to first base. Second baseman fumbled it. They tied the game and then hit a home run in the 10th inning. Otherwise, we win the series the opening weekend against Oklahoma. So we weren't good, but we weren't as bad as our record indicated. We just had those few pieces. But we're going to be much better this year, and I know the other teams are going to all be great again. So, it all comes down to how you compete on a given day against those teams. But there's no question that we have a more talented team this year because, I mean, we had like the 3rd-rated transfer portal class. We worked hard at recruiting this summer.
Yeah, well, I know you did, and if anybody can figure it out and get to where you want to be, I know you can do it for sure.
Well, thank you. Okay, Graham, nice to visit with you.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks again for taking time to do this, Coach.
Okay, my pleasure.